So we're here. We finally made it to the finale, and I have thoughts. Lots of them. I'm sure you probably do too. What I want to do is gotta go back if you have an opportunity, watch my review for the first two parts, and you'll understand where I'm coming from because I'm going to come with a shorthand. We're going to be spoiling some stuff. We're going to be talking about some other things. And overall, I would really love to have a discussion with you guys about whether or not my dueling disappointment and satisfaction makes sense. What's up, my know-it-alls? Okay, we're talking about Stranger Things, the series finale that just happened. Overall, let me get some basics out of the way. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this a lot. I think at its core, my problem is that if the season had been stronger, then this would have hit as arguably one of the greatest, most satisfying series finales of all time. Unfortunately, it comes on the heels of some really rocky storytelling, a little bit of rushed plot devices, and leans a little bit heavy into some of the circumstances we weren't expecting. But at the same time, I found it satisfying. So that feels like it can be incongruous, but you go with me with that. Last episode was the penultimate episode, and it didn't do what it's supposed to do. Anybody who watches the show knows that watches this show, Mr. Know-It-All, that when it comes to penultimate episodes, they have a job to do. Either they are where the climax happens and then you get the final episode for resolutions, or it sets up what is going to be the big giant action piece at the end, and in the end it does double duty. This did that. The funny part is up front, and again, spoilers if you haven't seen it yet, this is 2 hours and it splits the story in my opinion, because the main story we're here for gets resolved in the first hour. Absolutely does. And then when you get to the second hour, that's primarily picking up the pieces and showing us where everybody is and explaining certain things away. And by the way, we're going to get into all those different pieces and questions and all that other stuff about what happened, what didn't happen, what whole thing. The individual parts and pieces that they have are very satisfying. I like the story we've been told. I don't regret having watched Stranger Things. I do, however, regret them having not had a more impressive fifth season in terms of the build of parts 1 and 2. The first 7 episodes, I believe. They had strengths and weaknesses. It had to tell a big story quickly on the heels of what had been told before, and they did that. They achieved that. Do I think they achieved it well? I think it was very ham-fisted. But as we get to the end, I enjoyed this. Now, the funny part is, and again, we're talking about some spoiler stuff, the part in the cave, I literally had several people ask me, what did that mean? Why did that happen? Because they didn't understand that the piece they didn't understand. The cave being the part where the young Boy Scout person has to encounter the guy in the lab coat and pulls out a MacGuffin-y thing and whatnot. And all those pieces that go into that, that's from the stage play. I don't know if you remember, the stage play is a thing that existed. And I remember thinking to myself, what in the world could the stage play possibly be? Are they rehashing the series itself? And it turns out it was an origin story for Vecna. It was Henry's origin story. And so that scene is plucked right from that. The first thing that they do is out the gate, you get to the kids and you rescue them. The other thing is, and they do this because you have to raise the stakes of what's going to happen. The military manages to track down, because remember at the very end of the last episode, somebody opened the gate and Murray and them rather plowed right through into the Upside Down. So that's the first thing Linda Hamilton's all worried about, and they have this guy who's asking whatever else, and she sees radio station fuses with the WK whatever QR whatever, and so she's like, aha. And so now they're pinning down everybody. They go to the church, they catch the professor and what's his name's sister. They go and they catch Vicky and Max at the radio station. The plan is all hinging on Eleven and Kali going into her mind and going into Vecna's mind to hopefully help the kids get us to escape and whatnot, and it's supposed to be safe. Meanwhile, everybody else is going up the radio tower. The radio tower scene, you get a revisit one last time, a button, which I found out later on Noah Hawley really begged for this scene to be left in. You get a final scene between Will and Mike to have kind of a moment that solidifies their best friends. And I don't have a problem with that scene. I just feel like on the heels of the Will coming out scene, it just felt, I don't want to say disingenuous, but it felt clunky. Probably the best way I think I can put it. Either way, I didn't mind it. It does what it does. It communicates what it communicates, and ultimately gets us into the next part just fine. I was sure Steve was done for. I think we all were. I started about 15 minutes after Baby Know-It-All watched it because she's in Florida. And so she texts me, she's like, are you finishing it? I'm like, I'm not finished yet. I'm watching it. For me, at that point, I was shouting, I was like, Steve, no! Because Steve at one point looks like he's going to fall over because the abyss is actually slamming into the tower. It doesn't line up with one of the rifts, which is like, okay, these are practical thoughts that though you're encountering the issue, you sit here and go, well, that's why you guys have problems all the time because you're not thinking. Nobody's planning anything appropriately. But they make it through, they climb up, and then you have the most interesting moment because when they climbed up and out, I immediately, I thought to myself, so they're interdimensional travelers now. And sure enough, they're like, does this make us interdimensional, like space astronaut people?
Does this officially make us space travelers?
Interdimensional space travelers. Suck it, Armstrong.
And so that was fun. And it was kind of a eye-opening moment for me. Because one, that's the volume all day. It was an eye-opening moment for me because the more I sat there and I said to myself, okay, these characters have come this far, literally. The upside down used to be the scary thing. And now they're in this desert. They're on a whole nother planet, a whole other world. But you don't know if it's another dimension world or another Earth. Like, is it an actual world where the wormhole? It's just whatever. A lot of questions. By the way, up front, you're not going to get many answers to the questions you might have. You're going to get answers to some questions, but a lot of other things are going to hand wave away, and we'll talk about that toward the end. So when they go and they are walking, the brief conversation between Steve and dude, what's her name's boyfriend, fiance person who's not anymore, they broke up. And they have it's a fine scene, it's whatever. As they're getting to where they're going, we join everybody else. Kali and 11 Max manages to take them because they go into her mind, pull her in. She leads them through the path of Vecna's mind or Henry's mind until you get to where they believe she gets to the house. And once they're in the house, they convince the kids because Kali uses her illusion powers and makes it so that they look like they're gone. Vecna has been kicked out by 11 of the house. He gets up, he's all ticked off and the actor does a wonderful job looking angry all the time. There's this whole big scene where he's lifting up 11 and the kids get to see him be evil and understand he is the bad guy. And that's all they need. So they run out. That's when he notices that what's going down. He's like, oh my goodness. And so he's chasing them as they're heading to the cave. Derek is keeping everybody down. And Holly's like, just go. Y'all got to run. This is when the military shows up. You see this encounter between Vecna. He's left his mind and he's attacking everybody else. He goes to attack Hopper. And it's there that you find out he reveals Kali and 11's plan to off themselves after everything's done, because so long as 11 or Kali live, the military could still be trying to continue this series of experiments to create their own kid monsters, either like Henry or like 11, depending. He manages to terrify Hopper enough that Hopper tries to shoot him, and he gives him he makes it feel like he shot 11 through the glass. Henry used Hopper's fears against him in order to get him to pull her out early. She pulls her out early, pulls what's-her-face out early. The military then shows up. Meanwhile, the kids are all by themselves. The military catches Max, they catch Vicky, they catch everybody. Because that's the staple of how things are going. The military goes to the lab in the Upside Down, and that's where 11 and Kali get stopped by the sound wave devices off a helicopter. Murray's upstairs with the bomb stuff because they're going to blow up the Upside Down. And so what does Murray do? He throws a grenade because he's like, we can spare one of the things with some C4 or whatever. At the helicopter, blows it up. They're able to get out. Kali seemingly gets shot in this moment. And this is where you have this really interesting, there's more being discussed, and then they cut away. And you find out potentially more was said. Potentially, depending on how you feel about the ending. So we go back to the abyss, we're going to call it, the big desert area. And that's where what we looked like this creature, this castle tree thing, we find out there's an entity outside of Vecna, outside of Henry. It is what enticed him to do all that he's done. And it's the little Bernie hand thing that happens in the vision. The kids are outside. And Dustin goes, by the way, I know last episode I called him Justin by accident. I was literally a verbal slip. It's Dustin. All my D&D players, all my tabletop RPG people, you're going to feel me on this. He immediately assesses this giant thing and is like, okay, if we can get it over here into this area. We can all get on the sides and attack it and whittle down its HP. And it literally does like hit points. And they're like, dude, this is real life.
Only way to damage anything of that scale, we spread out. Flank it on all sides, just chip away at its hit points.
Hit points? What you talking about, hit points?
My thought is, it's such a great, like, I immediately was like, oh, okay, this is like a role-playing game, literally. And so they one of the, what's-her-face, Holly's sister goes and decides she becomes the bait, if you will.
Go!
To draw the creature in. They're fighting from the outside. 11 chooses to run toward the thing and go into its mouth. And so she's on the inside fighting. They're on the outside fighting. And she manages to lure it to the thing. So she's fighting it and shooting it with guns and all kinds of nonsense. Everybody's up top with one dude with flamethrowers and the other, the Harrington and Dustin underneath with spears or stabbing at the underbelly of this thing. And it's a D&D adventure campaign come to life. And it really was. It was such a wonderful, wonderful fight scene that was reminiscent of any RPG role player. You felt that scene so much. Especially because they managed to help bring the thing down along with 11 who's inside. 11 is facing him. She's doing her best to stab him into one of the giant teeth structure stalactite things inside the creature's body. And all of a sudden, an arm goes out and they cut back and you see that Will is, you're like, oh! I was so excited to see Will took over the thing and he's using Vecna's body and he hopes he's the one who had a conversation, the come to Jesus conversation where Vecna admitted everything that happened and said, no, I chose this. Because Will is like, you could totally turn. And he's like, no. And so he, at the very end of this scene, you see Will's mom come in. You hear the scenes and things she's lived through because of this monster. And she has an axe and all she can think to do, and he's gurgling and dying. She starts to chop and hack away at his neck to eventually, and each hit, everyone has a memory of some sort of tragedy or some suffering that happened at the hands of this monster. It's arguably, I didn't know that I would be so satisfied getting to see her end Vecna. And I really was. And it made me happy because as a character, she's had to bear so much. There's a whole list. The internet has a list of like, plot holes from whatever. And I fully have every intention tomorrow night on Nerd Fights and possibly again on Monday on my live stream to discuss sort of those, what people are calling plot holes. I've already established at the top, sloppy season, but I don't mind the way they stuck the landing. Are there problems? Absolutely there are. And I'm going to go into each of them and we're going to talk about those things, ultimately leading to my final score. By the way, if you want to skip ahead, there's a timeline below. You're more than welcome to skip ahead to the score if you just want to know. But if it's TLDR, okay, more by all means, totally fine. Or that'd be TLDW. Didn't want, yeah, whatever. It was very satisfying to see that ending. And then everybody coming back through the upside down, and they go, and then eventually they set the bombs and they leave. And the minute they come through the ending, the military, or through the gate, the military attacks them. They had the thing on the spikes on the ground to flatten tires. And they pull them all out of the car. And you see 11 get yanked out of the truck with everybody else. And that's when everyone's looking around after a little bit when they're all being, Linda Hamilton walks around and she's like looking around. Where is she? Where's 11? And we look and you see 11 at the gate on the other side. And Will looks around. He sees the sound generators that are messing with her head, and he just knows something's going on. And the explosion happens, and they bring it down. And you see this. She gets swept away, seemingly by the debris as the gate is closes. And now we see what used to be the public library, which is now surrounded by this makeshift base. It was a harsh moment. And of everyone to go, 11's the one who dies, seemingly. And everyone, you follow along. That's the end, quote unquote. That's the hour mark. And then there's another 45 minutes or more of just what happens after. That's why I said it feels like this should have been 9 episodes. And this was the penultimate piece. And then the last one would have been the resolution of the wrap up. And they do. They go 18 months in the future. The town's rebuilt. Robin gets to do a quick little cameo on the radio, and she says, hey, I'm back after so much, I wanted this and that. She's there for graduation day. It's Hawkins High graduation, class of 89. And the kids are there, and they're wearing their things and the whole bit. Dustin is the valedictorian. He does a wonderful job paying homage to Eddie's. If you remember correctly, Eddie explained how he was going to handle graduation, the graduation he never got to. And poetically, Dustin handles it exactly like that. Dustin does everything Eddie said he was going to do. And it's wonderfully inspiring, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it's great. I love it. Hopper helps Mike through the fact that Mike wasn't going to go to graduation, but because of the whole 11 thing. And he helps him realize, dude, you can't. He basically says to him, I've gone down that road, meaning Hopper with his daughter. And he goes, 11 wouldn't want you to do that. She wants better for you than that. She would want better for you than that. And he agrees and comes to the thing, and you have the graduation. It's wonderful. The guys get invited to a party by pretty girls, and it's crazy. And what ends up happening is they skip out on it. And because they have other plans. You get this moment where the grown-ups, I say the grown-ups, it's Harrington, it's Robin, all the older kids meet on the roof of the radio station, and they talk about their lives. And they're each doing something different, living their own lives, as it were. And what's her name is? She's a journalist. Robin is living her life in another town. We get to see that Steve is the baseball coach rather at the school. He's the PE coach, and spread also he's the sex ed teacher, because that's what happens with being the phys ed teacher at school. Everyone loves him. He's great. What's his name? Wilther brother is a filmmaker, aspiring filmmaker who's about to make a movie about capitalism, whatever else. It's cool. And then you get to the final scene, and the final scene is both poetic, a little bit sad, a very poetic, tragic, whatever. And it's the group playing Dungeons and Dragons, the kids. So it's Mike, Will, Dustin, Max, the whole team, everybody, the whole group playing Dungeons and Dragons. They lose initially. And he's like, well, that's it. You're done. And Max has this moment where she takes the game super seriously.
Okay, so now what?
That's it.
Nothing.
What do you mean, nothing?
Checkmate. We lost.
So after all of that, Strahd von Douchebag just wins?
It almost feels like they were lampshading, because they have to understand that at this point, everyone's like, what's left? Why would you milk this? Why blah, blah, blah? Like, she sounded like all of us talking about the first two parts. And that's when Will remembers they had the ability to call and summon a special kind of witch person, this one female magic user caster person, to rescue them. And they do the thing, and she shows up and rescues them, and everyone's excited and happy. And Max points out, that's it? Like, just that happy, drippy ending, and that's it?
Wait. Hold on. That's it. Comfort and happiness? Could you be more trite? I thought you were some kind of master storyteller or something.
And then he tells them a story. He tells them a story about this fictitious character, and the whole time he's talking, he's describing what he believes happened with 11. She was tapped out from using her power. She had nothing else in the tank. Not to mention the fact that they were using the inhibitor devices, the audio inhibitor devices, which would have kept her from being able to use her powers at all. Then he conjectures that Kali decided if she couldn't, if she came with them, she would have been subject to the inhibitor. From far away, she uses her power. 11 was with them. We saw her get dragged out of the truck. That's when Kali made 11 disappear, and 11 sneaks into the building and waits till it's all done. And Kali projects an image of 11 by the gate, and Will kind of implies that he vaguely remembers having maybe seen her hand get a little blurry, kind of like how Kali's illusions would get blurry in the edges. And then she was just magic, and then she was just gone. But how could they do that? Blah, 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 whatever else. And the theory is she knew nothing would change, nothing would get better, nothing would anything if she stayed, and she had to go, but that doesn't mean she had to die. And so she survives and has found someplace remote to stay out of the world's way and have some semblance of a peaceful life that she always wanted. Literally, Max asks him, is it true? And he says, we don't know. but I choose to believe it's true. And each of them succession says, I believe, I believe, I believe. And then they have this wonderful moment where the game is over. They each get up and they take their character's binder and they put it up with finality on the shelf. And ultimately, as they're all leaving, and they all have varying emotions, and this is a very raw scene. It's a very raw scene. And I believe, of everything I've ever seen in this show, I believe this scene most identifies how the actors, not necessarily the characters, though the characters I'm sure felt the same things, how the actors are feeling in the moment. Because it was very genuine. And as Mike's about to leave, his sister and her friends, including Derek, come bulldozing down, and they sit down at the table. They're talking about the things, and they're going to play the game. Another generation is going to do this, play this game, and enjoy this, and have adventures of their own in their own way. And Mike, I believe Mike is looking back, and he realizes more. This is our childhood closing. And he gives little moments when he was telling the story, before he told the story of potentially what he believes, his theory, we're going to call it the L theory, okay? Talks about each of the characters in character, what they got after the victory. It's so fun. I couldn't believe it, because there's one scene literally that shows Will at college in a gay bar, in an 80s gay bar. It's hilarious. You got people with the fishnets and the colored hair and the whole bit, and he's got his hair a little bit product in it. And I'm like, no bowl cuts for you, sir. There's a wonderful scene. Hopper asks what's her face to marry him, Winona Ryder to marry him. He mentions that there's an opportunity he has in a town, the Minnetonk has a opening for a sheriff. The show, and I'll put the picture on the screen, the show was originally pitched as Minnetonk. And it's based on folklore and lore, which has been both corroborated and conspiracy theoried and all this stuff. Urban legend, if you will, about experiments that were happening back in the MK Ultra days, CIA, back in this area. Experimenting on children to get them to have powers and stuff, or anything. Actually, the original story, Minnetonk, has to do more with time travel. So I feel like that might be the direction they're going to go in. I would love to see if that's the case, where the new Minnetonk series would have to do with something, those experiments, and delving into time travel, which would be a fantastic way of playing with some of their fast and loose history if they wanted to. You could even have some of those characters mentioning, oh yeah, the nonsense that they're doing over in Hawkins versus what we're doing here, that whole thing. And even maybe the ripple effect that could be happening as a result of events, or moving forward, whatever. Like, my point is, there's a world in which you build and tell that story finally. And I love that. I love that concept. I think that's a fun concept. I think when you take real life events, whether they're urban legends or not, and you play with them that way, I think you have fun with it. So yeah, there you go. Now you know. And if you don't have the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. What is the know-it-all index for this finale? It's for the whole series, but primarily the finale. I enjoyed this ending. Like I said at the top, I would have enjoyed it better if the season hadn't sucked in the places where I thought it did. I feel like this was an excellent way of showing certain things and keeping certain characters in our minds and really portraying it was a good close to the book, even if there was rocky chapters in between. And I'm okay with that. I know a lot of people aren't. There's a whole lot of holes. We hear nothing about the military, and apparently the military is perfectly okay with, probably because of military like being quiet and the government being hush hush, but everybody's fine with the Hopper and the group and the crew just indiscriminately shooting military people left and right. Like, that's okay. Nobody had an issue with that. Linda Hamilton, most underutilized and complete. What is she here for? She had none of that energy, though they gave her the wig. She had no Matthew Modine energy whatsoever. Other than just being an obstruction, the military were a MacGuffin to give us tension and add some sort of opposition. I feel like there's a universe in which you don't go that route, and there's a better route to have gone, and they didn't go there. Not to mention the quickness, which with the lore having to do with Vecna / Henry happened. And I don't believe we gave the fact that they were interdimensional. This is an interdimensional creature, a monster that was trying to incur on our universe enough weight. I feel like from a sci-fi place, I want to know so much more about those pieces, but we're never going to get those answers. I just, I don't. Baby Know-It-All had some thoughts. I'll play that here now.
Okay, hey guys, so my issue with all of it is that I would have been completely fine, by the way. I was really content until they threw that stupid theory in. If they just completely, took the theory out, I would have been fine. I literally would have been fine. But the theory literally took away from everything that they did. it just made more sense to like kill off Elle and like have it be like set in stone. But they were saying like Elle might have died, like she might have died, but like, you know, and like literally my thing is like you literally saw Callie like bleeding out on the floor. You literally saw her bleeding out on the floor, but she survived the extra 40 minutes. And all of a sudden she's just, you know, like making a whole like scene of like, oh, it's Elle, it's not actually Elle. Like that was so dumb. I thought that was so dumb. And then you don't see Vicky again. You don't see Murray. We aren't heard about that unless I missed the Vicky part, but we really aren't heard from Murray at all. And they literally rushed volume 2 so they could have 40 minutes of happiness in the end. Like it just, they could have done so much more. And then they could have like killed off many more people. Like they were like making it out to be like, oh, it's so dark and gruesome. You could have killed off Steve. You had opportunities to kill off Nancy and Jonathan in volume 2. And then you had another opportunity to kill off Nancy, but you didn't. And then you had an opportunity to make it set in stone that Elle died, but you didn't. And like there was like they literally, oh, also they only brought Callie back just to kill her. That was just it makes no sense. I'm sorry. Like I said, I could have really liked it, and then they threw that theory in, and then it just all troubled down. It all came down.
She was mad, man. She was mad. And I can't fault her. I think, look, ultimately, wherever you land on this thing, nobody can deny the fact that Stranger Things has been culturally a touchstone for us. Whether the kids look too old for the end or whatever is irrelevant. But we felt this. And I thought that the last episode, I felt like, for me, I was satisfied. So while the season was a mess and there are definitely holes, it was satisfying. And I'm okay with that. So as a result, my score for this is going to be a rock solid know-it-all 7 out of 10. Let me know what you thought. What are your score? What are your ideas? What didn't you like? What did you like? Tune in for Friday night on Nerd Fights. We're going to definitely discuss this a little bit. I want to talk more about it on the live stream Monday, so that's where I'll probably talk about most of the loophole things and sort of address those ideas. We'd love to have you guys on. I do a live stream every single Monday and every single Wednesday at noon. I take my lunch break. I spend it with you via here on YouTube and over on X at Mr. Know-It-All. And I would love to have you guys be a part of that. So join me if you can. If you can't, don't worry, you can catch the replay later. And send me questions, send me thoughts, participate. We love to engage with you guys on that level. And I look forward to seeing what comes next. I think the Duffers have a good future ahead of them. I don't think this was Game of Thrones. A lot of people said that. I don't think that. I think there's going to be a lot of rage baiters out there who are going to try to say, was it as good as it could have been? Absolutely not. I think had the season been more solid, this could have been the greatest ending of all time. And it just wasn't that. It was to that end, it was serviceable, it was good, and I'm satisfied and happy. And that's all you can ask in this kind of scenario. So we'd love to hear more about your thoughts. We'll talk again next week. Never forget, everyone loves to know it all. Bye, guys.